I'm Nicolas Bornozis, president of Capital Link, and I would like to welcome you to Capital Link's Trending News webinar series. We have the great privilege today to have with us Mr. Marco Fiori, the CEO of Premuda, and we're going to talk about the exciting development actually of Premuda under his leadership and the new stage of the company as we have now the management buyout. Before we start, just a quick reminder of the usual disclaimer that this webinar is for informational purposes only. It's not investment advice or advice of any kind. And with this, I will welcome Marco. Marco, thank you for being
Thank you, Nicolas. Nice being with you.
Always great having you. I mean, we know each other for a long time, and it's a great privilege to have you with us again. Now, Premuda is one of the oldest shipping companies. It was incorporated in Trieste in 1907.
Yes.
You joined the company 6 years ago in 2019 when Pillarstone took over the company following its financial reorganization. So let me start by asking you.
Actually, Pillarstone took over Premuda in 2017, and then we joined with the CFO in January 1st of 19, but it's correct what you're saying.
So tell us the stage of the company when you took it over, how you developed it under your leadership, and where are you today?
Well, the company was mainly, as you well know, was mainly, there were two platforms. One was Premuda, another one was FINA, and was mainly used by Pillarstone to help the banks, the banks who had problems with Italian ship owners, and they started taking over ships. As Premuda goes by, which probably is the simplest, I remember when we joined, we had eight handies dry, a Suezmax, very old, 2003, I think, something like that. And we had 50% of a share of two LR2s that were built at Samsung. So mainly was a fleet that was all dry cargo because you had nine dry cargo ships. Today, Premuda is a fleet that is mainly 14 ships. 14, we have tankers, and then we have four bulk carriers, which is one Panamax and three handies. So you can see, as was a fleet dominated by dry, it became a company with a fleet dominated by tankers. And well, we can talk about later on who were the good partners in all of this, but for sure there was moments in which we had to restructure the company. The company was in Article 67, that is similar to what was the Chapter 11 in the US. We came out of it in December 23. So we've been out for 1 year and a half. And then finally there was this last transaction that we did. So, so it's been very much was an old dry cargo dominated company turning into a more modern tanker dominated company. And just to take what you were saying, it's true in Trieste in 1907, we have in Genova the act of incorporation of Premuda because it was incorporated the company, and it's signed by the emperor of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, because in 1907, Trieste was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So it was actually, we have the act of incorporation was signed by Franz Joseph, Emperor of Austria, which is kind of interesting. Yeah.
Well, it's really, I mean, it's a legacy company. Clearly, you restructured it now. You're going into a new phase of development. So let me ask you, since 2019 until today, you have been working with Pillarstone, who was the only shareholder. How was it working with or for a private equity firm?
Well, it's very different. As you know, I had a story of 23 years with D'Amico. It was more of a family-owned. But I must tell you one thing. It's been very educative working with Pillarstone. For sure, they have different ways, methodology, but they have been able to extract a lot of value of the company. And you hear a lot of stories of private equity funds. At the end of the day, I found was a very good solution, because at the end of the day, we managed to solve a problem for the banks. We managed to do a lot of things. At the end of the day, Pillarstone prides itself of being a private equity fund, but helping the banks to solve their problems, and so which was also in this case. So actually, it was a very educative experience. Was really good.
One of the interesting things that a lot of people think of private equity firms or financial investors are mainly as short-term investors, but I can see from Pillarstone's case that they have been a steady partner in this venture, and now you have the management buyout. So I wanted to ask you now, you and Enrico Barbieri, the CFO, you will be shareholders of the company, but Pillarstone will still be the majority.
Absolutely.
So
They still remain inside, yes, and which is good, because at the end of the day, it's been a team that has gone through a lot. If you imagine 6 years doesn't seem much, but if you think in 6 years we went through the COVID, imagine all the things that have happened in these 6 years. Sometimes you feel like it's been a lifetime. So they are remaining as majority owners. It is Enrico Barbieri as CFO. There is some other person of the staff, one person of the staff who's also shareholders, minority. So the three of us, we are the core inside the company. And also today we had a long meeting with Pillarstone. It's people that listen. At the end of the day, sometimes the dance at a different tune, but they listen very accurately. So it's kind of interesting. So it's good. It's good.
Now, obviously, the three of you will have, so to speak, more skin in the game. But apart from that, it's continuity of management, it's continuity of shareholders. So nothing really material changes. You will be applying the same principles, I think, that you have applied so far to develop the company.
Absolutely. And, we all brought to the table different skills. For example, who's been financing this acquisition is a bank in shipping, which will come. I'll let you know next time, because I don't know if they want to be mentioned. But it's people that I've seen a lot in my life, and was also good that for Pillarstone we could bring part of our experience of the past inside all of this. So so this was a good thing. So I think everybody brought to the table some kind of skills. And like it's the symbol of Pillarstone, it is this column. At the end of the day, it was like 2-3 columns holding the whole building. So I feel it was a good deal, and then staff was maintained. The office in general was maintained. We've been expanding in Malta for some parts of the company. So it has been a good mix of skills, so and I think normally you get out the best of these things when you have people, different horses for different courses. So in this course, I think it was the right horses that came in. There was the experience, Pillarstone, that way of managing, Enrico with the CFO activity, that he was a CFO, very good, he's a very good CFO. We had a lot of things that was a kind of circle of improvement.
So in a recent interview with TradeWinds, very good one, you mentioned that you are aiming for a fleet of 25 to 30 vessels, more than what we have today, split between dry cargo and tankers. So why these two sectors? Is it because you're more familiar with them, you see more opportunities in them?
Look, I think probably I'm more of a tanker person, but I realize you remember that I was leading D'Amico when we did the IPO on the Milan Stock Exchange, and in those days was very much something that people wanted to have mainly one segment of activity. So everybody wanted either to invest in a pure product tanker play, a pure tanker crude tanker play, a crude dry play, but at the end, and I think a lot of things have a little bit changed. I've always been a little bit of a supporter, probably because I was coming from D'Amico before, that has a big dry fleet and a big tanker fleet. That I think everybody's served better if you have two segments that more or less offset each other during opposite cycles. So, I realize that sometimes investors are looking for the boom or the boom cycle, but I think if you can achieve a steady return and growth of returns, probably it is much better also for potential investors. And that's why I'm saying 25, 30, because I think we should go back to a fleet of 15 tankers, 10 dry, mainly in very specific sectors. I think our sectors of activity mainly would be on the oil side, would be MRs and probably some LR2s, which we have some, and on the dry side, probably the smaller sizes, which are more tradable, like handies or ultras. So the kind of ships that there is. If you invest wisely, you can do well, but there is not those high levels of volatility that you find in Capes, in Suezmaxes, in VLCCs. It's something where there is more of a tradability of ships. You can do triangulations and better. I think it's more rewarding, something like that.
So, Marco, let me now ask you, you have these great expansion plans. How do you plan to implement them, to pursue them? I know that you've been a great proponent of these charter-ins with long duration and purchase options. I also know that you are extremely well known and you take great advantage of the Japanese leasing, great relationships with shipyards and financiers. So are these going to be the main drivers of your strategy? How do you plan to go about it?
I think these are going to be the main driver, because I think you tend to stick to the people who you've known in the past and who you've been doing business and who you feel comfortable with. So I think for sure that will be the main avenues. Then we're introducing. Imagine a company like Premuda, after all the restructuring, was a company with no banking relationships left, because all the banks had left and everything got consolidated. And today we've been able to rebuild some banking relationship with some old banks, historical, that I knew in shipping in Europe. So we have an interesting mix. We have some European shipping banks, and we have the support of the Japanese, not only of the shipyards, because as we have spoken many times, there is the shipyards and there is the companies owned by the shipyards, which take some of their ships and then put them out in the market, but also a lot of normal owners. In a place like Imabari, there is probably over 100 owners, and everybody wants to have some ships, ocean-going ships. So they're always very eager to try and do a transaction where they buy the ship and they charter it to you for a certain period of time, or otherwise they do a sale and lease back, they buy it back and they give it to you in bareboat with an obligation. So it's a very vast thing. And Japanese have really been very good partners. So for sure, well, we've been in Tokyo together, and I think that also Capital Link has a good name and reputation in Japan. You've been building it, and once you've been building that, I think that Japan, it is always a very good market.
Remember, Marco, that when we started doing our presence in the Japanese market, you were, of course, instrumental, but everybody was trying to say, you can't come into the Japan without having Mark on board.
No.
But you're right. I think it's the people that you build relations for the long term, and I think shipping is one of those areas that allows you to build these long-term relationships and really.
You mentioned the article on trade winds, and I loved on that article that I was mentioned as a veteran of shipping. So probably old people can learn new tricks, can't learn new tricks. But when you've seen them all and you've built some strong relationship, it is a good thing.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned that
Japan is less transaction based. It's more relationship based, like
absolutely.
things were once.
And I think the owners who do business with Japan is a much smaller group. Very high quality owners, exactly, capitalizing on these long-term relationships.
Oh yeah, because you don't perform on a deal, you're completely out of the market for many years. It's not like you're back on the next deal. For them, trustworthiness, keeping your word is paramount. A lot of these people, and it's fantastic.
Absolutely. Now, let me ask you, you are focusing, you said, primarily on second-hand ships as opposed to new builds. I thought that a lot of the Japanese deals are new build based. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. But, the problem on new buildings is that Japan, due to the quality of their ship, they have a big order book probably running into 28, 29. So also the market, if you go into a weaker market like we've been going now into dry and tankers, shipyards, when they have such a long landing strip, they're not very inclined in lowering prices. So where you get the biggest bang for your buck is in second-hand ships. But when I say second-hand, I say ships 5-6 years old. So, very modern ships, because, normally they do one cycle of charter, then they do another cycle of charter. So I think that's probably where you have the sweet spot is in the second-hand ships. New buildings are fantastic. But, why should a shipyard negotiate prices when they still have 3-4 years of order book locked in at good prices? They rather sit down and wait and see the developments of the market. That's the only reason why secondhand and not new builds.
Marco, when you go to vessel acquisitions, any particular set of criteria that you use as a guiding principle for your investments?
Well, I think that first of all is the quality, but that the moment you start buying Japanese or Korean tonnage is very good quality. So, that's for sure. And then the second thing is that should be modern. I think at the beginning, when I was in the Migo, we're looking at eco ships. Now, here on this second thing, we're looking at super eco ships. So ships that have been the oldest ones, the 16, 17, 18, so already second or third generation of eco ships. And that makes a big difference, because at the end of the day, if we have to go through decarbonization and everything, I think the fact that if the whole world had a fleet of eco ships, we all switched to eco ships altogether, I think that would be a big step forward in solving the problem of decarbonification. I think we tend to forget that from pre-eco to last generation eco ships, you have fuel consumption that are more or less half for the same performance, bigger ships than the consume they have. So when you have these kind of dynamics, it is a big change in the market. So I think if everybody was starting the step forward to start having modern fleets, that would be a big step in the right direction, already big step.
By the way, you opened the door to the question I wanted to ask you about overall decarbonization and so on. With the upcoming IMO regulations, it is, I think, expected that this will have an impact on vessel supply and also on the cost differential for ships that are burning the heavy fuel as opposed to modern.
Sure, you have a big difference, but the moment if you burn less, it's evident that you pollute less. And so going on smaller ships, for example, handies, dry, I see difficulty in these kind of ships outfitted with LNG or ammonia, because they're such ships that tramp in so many ports that would mean completely restructuring the global logistic chain of supplies, of fuel supplies in the world. I don't see that in every port you can find, also for smaller ships, ammonia or whatever it is that we're looking at. But for sure, by the fact that you consume less, you burn less, you're polluting less. There's no doubt about that. It's kind of a clear fact.
Marco, I think when most owners, when you're dealing with issues like decarbonization, for example, clearly regulation is a driving force because we have
absolutely.
But at the same time, a number of owners try to go beyond that based on their perception or evaluation of the competitive advantage. So where do you stand in that in terms of any particular alternative fuels that you favor? Or that you see more feasible?
No. For the time being, I think that probably we're looking, as I told you, that all our ships size except LR2s that are a little bit bigger, but otherwise will be MR, Handys, Ultras. We're all talking of ships that are kind of smaller. So it would be very difficult to outfit them for alternative fuels. But the fact that you're moving to modern generation of hull design, modern generation of engine design, I think the moment you're you're burning less, you're polluting much less. And I think that should be a little bit the concept. I think we all have to be, we have a little bit to drop a little bit. It became a little bit more of an hysteria, this of alternative fuels and everything. But I think we have to be very logical. I think we have to move as fast as technology moves, but at the same time, if we have modern ships, we're burning much less.
Probably the dual fuel is an easier solution to adopt as opposed to picking just one fuel.
Well, dual fuel, it is a great solution, but as I told you, probably an MR or a handy dry is a ship that goes in all kind of ports, and it's very difficult to see that you have the whole infrastructure of bunker supply being ready all over the world. Imagine Africa, what kind of investment you should do in all the small ports you go in Africa or up the rivers in South America. These are rivers where they're big, ships that are 30, 40,000 tons go up there, 50,000 tons go up there. But can you imagine all this? You go at these smaller ports and you have a refueling station for ammonia, a refueling station for low sulfur, a refueling station. Would be such a global investment that I don't think the world can do it, at least not in our times. I think probably we'll be going through some alternative solutions. I think one that I think would be a good one would be probably carbon recapture, because if we could do that, we could keep using the usual fuels that we're using today, but recapturing the carbon. But having dual fuel ships in all these ports would be kind of complicated, and so probably, but then, it's such a minimal thing, I think today a small handy probably consumes 14 tons per day. And these are ships that 15 years ago were at 23, 24. Imagine what the difference you have, 10 tons a day, much less. So it's... So
let me ask you one last question. You are in shipping global business. How are you navigating now through all these geopolitics, tariffs, all the upheavals in global commerce? What is your take on where we are and what the end game would be?
I try not to slide too much on the political side, but I think that at the end of the day, there is this pushback on globalization. But I think at the end of the day, we should not forget that globalization, at least in my lifetime and probably in your lifetime, imagine through globalization how many people we lifted from extreme poverty to bring to have a normal life where they can grow their kids, educate them, give them a job. I think globalization, certain things, has been a good thing. Then you have always, like everything, too much of a good thing can turn into a bad thing. But this is a human problem that we tend always to have excesses. But I think we have to learn how to navigate. I can understand what happens. Everybody probably has to change a little bit the rules, taking into consideration certain objectives, on not trying to have too strong positions of exports in certain countries. But I think at the end of the day, I think these 20 years, 25 years, starting in 2000 of globalization, we have really lifted a lot of people from poverty. And I think that's a good thing, at the end of the day, because there was some countries with extreme poverty and we brought them to have a normal life, So I think it's not all bad, There's been some good things, At least I like to think that,
So Marco, closing, any words of wisdom on the outlook for dry bulk and tankers?
On the outlook, look, I think that both of them on the tanker, especially on the MR side, there's a big order book that's going to come in. But I think there is also a big push is going to come. We had a very strong market with no scrapping at all. Nobody was scrapping a ship at these levels. So I think we have to go back into a normal cycle of starting to scrap the older ships, also for the reasons I told you, of less pollution and modernizing the fleet and everything. So I think both of them look kind of interesting. I tend to believe that probably on dry cargo, probably you'll have in the next 6 to 8 months more of an entry point on dry cargo than on tankers. I think tankers are still in that level where not many people build tankers. There's a big order book, not many people build them. So there's going to be, numbers are going to be sustained pretty high. Dry cargo, I think there's going to be more opportunity on the second-hand, 5-6 years old ships, that's going to be probably there more of an entry point. At the end of the day, Nicolas, in shipping, it's always finding the right entry point. If you find the right entry point, you already start very well ahead,
Absolutely, and you're buying assets that are long-term assets. So
Absolutely.
well, thank
And
you.
it's interesting how also oil company, everything, they're starting to move. Before was no big oil major was chartering for long-term period ships, any ships older than 15 years. Now you start seeing that due to the evolution of the market, the lack of more modern ships, now they start being a little bit more flexible. But 15 years, it means 2010. In a couple of years, you start having only eco ships on the water,
So Marco, thank you for being with us. Let me ask you a closing question. I'm tempted to ask this. I know you're doing very well in the private sector. Any particular plans that to come back to the publicly listed domain?
Sure, because Pillarstone, I think at a certain point, like a fund, if they want to optimize, at a certain point, probably they'll have to look at some kind of capital market transaction, will be reverse listing or a full-time listing. I think it's very strategic. We have done it once. I would love to be one of the few guys who has listed 2 companies in his lifetime. But I'm still working on that.
Bear that in mind to knock on your door. So, Marco, thank you very much for being with us today. We had a great privilege to share the insight of
It's my privilege that I've known Capital Link for many years, and congratulations for the job you're doing, Nicolas. And you're always you're a very good. Have always had very good questions, but you're also a very good listener. So that's an important thing.
Well, Marco, thank you. I also follow your advice. I focus on these wonderful relationships we have developed over the years, and hopefully many, many more.
And I'll see you in Tokyo. I'll see you in Tokyo for the next Capital Link Forum.
Absolutely. We'll be hoping together with the partners in Columbia Ship Management. So I look forward to, as always, to have you there with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you again.
Ciao, Nicolas. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your friendship.
Well, likewise.
Ciao, ciao.